The unspoken truth. Clara's phone buzzed for the third time that evening. She stared at Daniel's name on the screen, her finger hovering over the decline button. Outside her apartment window, Portland's autumn rain drummed against the glass in an endless, hypnotic rhythm. She could picture him clearly, probably sitting in his car outside her building again, coffee in hand, that patient smile waiting. The same smile that had been waiting for 8 months now. 8 months of careful conversations, of almosts, of her pulling back every time something real threatened to break through. She let the call go to voicemail. Again. The silence that followed felt both like relief and like drowning. What Clara didn't know, couldn't know, was that this would be the last week Daniel would wait. The next evening, Clara sat across from her father at their usual Sunday dinner spot, a small Italian restaurant tucked between Powell's Books and a vintage record shop. Eduardo Silva was 68, with silver hair that caught the warm amber light of the restaurant's Edison bulbs, and hands permanently stained with traces of developer fluid from decades of darkroom work. He'd been a photographer once, the kind who captured wedding days and newborns and golden anniversaries. Now retired, he spent his days in his garden and his evenings reading Clara with the same careful attention he'd once given to light and shadow. "You're doing it again," Eduardo said quietly, not looking up from his ossobuco. Clara paused, fork midway to her mouth. "What?" "That thing where you pretend everything is fine." He finally met her eyes. "Your mother used to do the same thing. Smile in place, walls up, heart on lockdown." The comparison stung more than Clara wanted to admit. She set down her fork, the soft clink against porcelain too loud in the sudden tension. "Dad, I'm fine. Work is busy, that's all. Midterms are coming up." "Clara." His voice was gentle but immovable. "I know what running looks like. I spent 3 years watching you do it after Marcus, but this isn't about Marcus anymore, is it?" Her throat tightened. Marcus. The name still carried weight, even after 5 years. The relationship that had imploded spectacularly, publicly, leaving her reputation bruised and her trust shattered. A colleague, an affair discovered, a humiliation that had made her the subject of department gossip for months. "It's about Daniel," Eduardo continued, his tone careful. "The architect who's been bringing you coffee every Tuesday before your early class, the one whose calls you keep declining." Her chest constricted. "How do you—" "I mentioned him once, just once, 6 months ago. Your whole face changed when you said his name." Eduardo leaned forward slightly. "And then you never mentioned him again. That's when I knew you were scared." The drive home was silent, except for the rain and the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers. Clara's mind circled back to Tuesday mornings. Daniel appearing at her office door at 7:45 a.m. sharp, 2 coffees in hand, that architectural journal tucked under his arm. They'd talk about her lectures, his projects, everything and nothing. He listened in a way that made her feel seen, not studied. He laughed at her terrible puns. He remembered she took her coffee with oat milk and 1 sugar. And every time she felt herself leaning closer, wanting more, that old panic surged up like a wave. What if he leaves? What if he betrays you? What if you're not enough? She parked in her father's driveway. She didn't remember deciding to come here instead of home, but here she was. Eduardo's small craftsman house glowed warm in the darkness, porch light a beacon. He was already at the door when she climbed the steps, water dripping from her jacket. "Come in," he said simply. "I want to show you something." The house smelled like old books and lemonwood polish, comforting and familiar. Eduardo led her not to the living room, but down the narrow hallway to his study, a room Clara rarely entered. It was his sanctuary, filled with filing cabinets of negatives, framed photographs lining every wall, and a massive oak desk buried under photography magazines. He pulled an old leather-bound album from the bottom drawer, its spine cracked with age, corners worn soft. The cover was embossed with a simple date, 1985 to 1987. "Your mother and I," Eduardo began, settling into his chair with the album in his lap. "We almost made it." Clara's breath caught. In all her 37 years, she'd never heard her father speak about their relationship as anything other than a perfect love story. Her mother, Anna, had died when Clara was 19. A sudden aneurysm, no warning, no goodbye. The grief had been devastating, but the story of their love had always been Clara's North Star, proof that lasting love existed. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Eduardo opened the album slowly. The first page showed a young version of himself, dark hair, lean, holding a camera, standing beside a woman with wild curls and an infectious smile, Anna. But it was the handwriting in the margins, small, cramped notes in his father's hand. March 12th. Asked her to dinner. She said yes, terrified. April 3rd. Told her about my childhood. First time I've been honest with anyone. She didn't run. June 18th. Almost told her I loved her. Couldn't do it. Afraid to seem too much. Clara leaned closer, her heart beginning to pound. These weren't just captions. They were confessions. "I started this album," Eduardo explained, his voice thick with memory, "the week I met your mother. Every photograph, I wrote what I was really thinking, the truth I couldn't say out loud." He turned the page. More photos. Anna laughing at a beach, Anna in a coffee shop, Anna dancing at someone's wedding, and more notes. September 2nd. She said she loved me. I froze. Said thank you. Thank you. I'm an idiot. September 15th. Haven't called her in a week. If I don't call, she can't leave me first. September 22nd. She showed up at my apartment, asked what she did wrong. I had no answer. Clara's eyes stung. "Dad." "I was terrified," Eduardo said simply. "My own father had left when I was 8. Walked out one morning, never came back. And my first serious girlfriend in college had cheated on thee with my roommate. So when I met your mother, this brilliant, open, fearless woman, all I could think was, how long until she sees I'm not enough? How long until she leaves?" He turned another page. A photograph of Anna, alone, sitting on a park bench. Her expression was distant, sad. The note beside it read, October 10th. Saw her at the Martyrs Market. She was with another man. Laughing. The way she used to laugh with me. I've lost her. And it's my fault. I'd pushed her so far away that she started moving on. And I realized, standing there in that market, watching her smile to someone else, fear had cost me everything. Not her leaving, not her betraying me. My own fear. "What did you do?" Clara asked, barely breathing. Eduardo smiled, sad and proud all at once. "I went home. I finished this album. Every photograph, every note, every terrified thought. I laid it all out. And then I brought it to her apartment at midnight. Knocked on her door. When she answered, I handed it to her and said, 'This is who I really am. I'm scared. I'm broken. I'm probably going to mess this up. But I love you, and I don't want to lose you because I was too afraid to tell you the truth.'" He closed the album gently. She read every page that night. And you know what she said? Clara shook her head, tears streaming freely now. "Eduardo," she said, "I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be here. Fear is fine. Silence is what chills us." The words landed like a physical blow. Silence is what kills us. Clara looked at the album, at these captured moments of her father's terror and courage, and saw her own reflection. How many calls had she declined? How many coffee mornings had she kept carefully light, never saying what she really felt? How many times had Daniel looked at her with those patient, hoping eyes, waiting for her to let him in, while she smiled and changed the subject? "Dad," she whispered, "I think I've already lost him." Eduardo reached out, covering her hand with his. "Then you have nothing left to lose by telling him the truth."
Clara took the album home that night. She sat on her living room floor, the album open in front of her, and read every single note. Every confession of fear. Every moment of almost courage. Every time her father had chosen vulnerability over safety. One photograph in particular stopped her cold. Her father and mother on their wedding day, but this photo was different from the formal portraits Clara had seen 100 times. This was taken from behind, catching them in an unguarded moment. Eduardo's hand reaching for Anna's, hesitating in mid-air, visible trembling. The note read, November 4th, 1987, our wedding day. I am terrified. What if I fail her? What if I'm not the husband she deserves? What if this is the biggest mistake of both our lives? But I'm here. I'm choosing her. I'm choosing to be brave enough to be loved. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, something breaking open in her chest. Her father, the strongest man she knew, had been just as terrified as she was, and he'd married her mother anyway. And they'd had 24 beautiful, complicated, real years together before the aneurysm stole her away. What if Clara had 24 years with Daniel? What if she had 24 days? Wasn't any amount of real love worth the risk of pain? Her phone buzzed. Daniel's name appeared. Can we talk? Please? I'll be at Cathedral Park tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll wait. Clara's hands shook as she typed. I'll be there. But even as she hit send, the fear surged back. What are you doing? You'll just hurt him. You'll just fail. You always do. Cathedral Park stretched beneath the Gothic arches of St. John's Bridge, the Willamette River flowing dark and steady beyond. Daniel stood near the water's edge, hands in his jacket pockets, and when he saw Clara approaching, his entire body seemed to release something, tension she hadn't realized he'd been carrying. You came, he said, and his voice held such raw relief that Clara almost turned around right then. I'm sorry, began, for not answering, for Clara. He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, cedar and something clean, familiar. I need to know what's happening here, with us, because for 8 months I've been showing up. I've been patient, I've been hoping that maybe you felt even a fraction of what I feel, but you keep... He paused, searching for words. You keep disappearing. Every time we get close to something real, you vanish. Her throat closed. This was it. This was the moment. Say it. Tell him. The words stuck. Daniel, it's complicated. Complicated? Something shifted in his expression, hurt flashing across his features. That's what you're going with? After 8 months? No, I mean... Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. The album's images flashed through her mind, her father's trembling hand. I'm choosing to be brave enough to be loved. I mean, I'm scared. I'm scared because you're wonderful and patient, and you show up, and every time I start to believe this could be real, I remember that I've been hurt before, and I don't know if I can survive it again if you... 3 days passed. Clara didn't leave her apartment except to teach her classes. She moved through her lectures on autopilot, avoiding her office, avoiding her phone, avoiding everything. Daniel didn't call, didn't text, And somehow that silence was worse than anything. Thursday evening, her colleague Sarah cornered her in the faculty parking lot. "Hey," Sarah said, concern etched across her face. "You okay? You've been off." Clara forced a smile. "Fine, just busy." "Right." Sarah didn't buy it for a second. "Well, I thought you should know. I ran into Daniel yesterday at that coffee shop you two always—" She paused, clearly regretting starting this sentence. "Anyway, he mentioned he's leaving." Clara's world tilted. "What?" "He accepted that job offer in Denver, the one he's been sitting on for months. He's packing up, leaves next Tuesday." Sarah squeezed Clara's arm gently. "I'm sorry, I thought you knew." The parking lot seemed to tilt and spin. Tuesday. 5 days from now. That night, Clara sat in her father's study again, the album open in her lap. She'd read every page so many times she'd memorized them. But now she turned to the very last photograph, one she'd barely glanced at before. It was dated 2011, 4 months before her mother died. The photo showed Eduardo and Ana in their kitchen, dancing in their pajamas, coffee mugs abandoned on the counter. They looked older, gray hair, laugh lines, but the way Eduardo held Ana was exactly the same as in that wedding photo. Reverent, grateful, present. The note beside it read, July 15th, 2011. "Still scared sometimes. Still worried I'm not enough. But Ana told me something today. Eduardo, fear doesn't go away just because you love someone. You love them anyway. You love them while you're afraid. That's what makes it brave." She's right. She's always right. God, I hope I get 50 more years of being terrified and brave with this woman. But he didn't get 50 more years. He got 3 months. And Clara suddenly understood, with devastating clarity, her father's fear hadn't gone away. He'd lived with it every single day of their marriage, and he loved her mother anyway. And when Ana died suddenly, without warning, the pain nearly destroyed him. But he told Clara once, years after the funeral, "I would do it all again. Every terrified moment. Because those 24 years with your mother were worth any amount of pain at the end. Worth any amount of pain." She was rambling, words tumbling out in a cascade, getting closer and closer to the truth. "If I what?" Daniel asked, his voice softer now. "Leave? Hurt you?" "Yes," Clara gasped. "Yes, because everyone does eventually, and I'm not strong enough." And there it was, the core of it, the truth she'd never said out loud. "I'm not strong enough to survive you." Daniel reached for her hand, and Clara let him take it. His palm was warm, solid, real. "Clara, I'm not going anywhere." And that's when she broke. Because that promise, that beautiful, impossible promise, was too much, too big, too terrifying. What if he meant it? What if he really meant it and I let myself believe him, and then... Clara pulled her hand away. She whispered, "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I thought I could, but I can't." And she ran. She actually ran, back through the park, past the bridge, not stopping until she reached her car. She sat in the driver's seat shaking, watching in the rearview mirror as Daniel stood frozen in the exact spot where she had left him, his expression completely, utterly shattered. She'd hurt him. She'd done exactly what she feared most. She'd hurt someone who'd done nothing but show up for her with patience and hope and open hands. And now she'd destroyed it. Friday morning, Clara called in sick to work. She spent the day at her father's house, helping him replant his winter vegetables, something they'd done together every autumn since she was a child. Her hands worked the soil mechanically while her mind spiraled. "You're gonna let him leave," Eduardo said finally, not looking up from the kale seedlings. It wasn't a question. Clara's hands stilled in the dirt. "I hurt him, Dad." I looked him in the face and ran away. Why would he want anything to do with me now? Maybe he wouldn't. Eduardo sat back on his heels, wiping soil from his hands. Or maybe he's waiting for you to show up the way I showed up for your mother. Messy, terrified, honest. But what if... Clara... Her father's voice held a sharp edge she rarely heard. Stop. Stop asking what if he leaves and start asking what if I never try. Because I promise you, the second question will haunt you a lot longer than the first. Clara looked down at her soil-covered hands, at the tiny seedlings that would grow into something nourishing if tended with care, and made a decision. "Do you still have that old Polaroid camera, the one from the 80s? Eduardo's eyes widened slightly, understanding dawning. "In the hall closet. Why?" "Because I need to tell him the truth. And I need proof that I mean it." Saturday evening, Clara stood outside Daniel's apartment building, her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she thought she might pass out. In her hands, a small leather portfolio she'd assembled in 24 sleepless hours. She'd used her father's Polaroid to capture her own confessions, photograph after photograph, each with a handwritten note. A photo of her empty office at 7:45 a.m. "You've been bringing me coffee every Tuesday for 8 months. I never told you it's my favorite part of the week." A photo of her phone screen showing Daniel's contact. "I've declined 47 of your calls, not because I don't care, because I care too much." A photo of Cathedral Park at sunset. "I ran because I was terrified of how much I wanted to stay." A photo of her father's album. "My father taught me that fear doesn't make you weak. Silence does." And finally, a photo of herself taken in the mirror, eyes red from crying, but clear, present. This is me choosing courage over comfort. This is me asking, can we start over? Honest this time, scared this time, together this time. Clara pressed the buzzer before she could lose her nerve. "Hello?" Daniel's voice came through the speaker, cautious. "It's me," Clara said, her voice shaking. "I know you're probably packing. I know Tuesday is... I know I don't deserve your time. But I need 5 minutes. Please?" The silence stretched so long Clara thought he might not answer. Then, "Come up." Daniel stood in his half-packed apartment, boxes stacked against the walls, and tried to study his breathing. He'd spent 3 days convincing himself he was doing the right thing. Denver was a good opportunity, a fresh start, a chance to stop hoping for something that Clara clearly couldn't give him. But the moment he heard her voice through the intercom, small, scared, there, every carefully constructed wall had crumbled. The knock came. He opened the door. Clara stood in the hallway and she looked wrecked. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater that she had probably owned since college, and holding a leather portfolio like a shield. "I made something," she said with that preamble. Can I show you?" Daniel stepped aside and she entered his apartment like someone walking into a lion's den. She didn't sit, just stood in the middle of his living room, opened the portfolio, and handed him the first Polaroid. He looked at the image of her office, read the note, and something in his chest cracked. She handed him the next one, and the next. Each photograph, each confession, each piece of brutal honesty she'd been too afraid to speak out loud. Daniel's hands started shaking with the third image. When he got to the final photograph, Clara's face, vulnerable and real, he had to sit down. "I'm terrified," Clara whispered, and now she was crying openly. "I'm terrified that you'll leave. I'm terrified that I'll mess this up. I'm terrified that I'm already too late and you hate me for what I did at the park."
that I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been. She wiped at her eyes roughly. My father almost lost his mother because he was too afraid to be honest. And then he got 24 years with her, and then she died anyway, and it destroyed him. But he told me he'd do it all again. That loving her was worth any amount of pain. Clara looked at him directly, and Daniel saw everything in her expression: fear and hope and desperate, terrified courage. I don't know if I'm worth the pain. I don't know if I'll be good at this, that I know I want to try. If you haven't already decided, I'm not worth your pain. Daniel set the portfolio down carefully. He stood, crossed the room, and stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Clara?" he said, voice at a rough. "I accepted the Denver job because I thought you'd never let me in. I thought I was torturing myself waiting for something that was never going to happen." Her face crumpled and she nodded, starting to step back. Daniel caught her hand. "But that was before this," he gestured to the portfolio, "before you showed up, terrified and honest, and here." He squeezed her hand gently. "I called them this morning. I turned it down." Clara's eyes widened. "What?" "I turned it down," Daniel repeated, a small, disbelieving smile crossing his face. "Because I woke up yesterday and realized I don't want to run away from fear. I want to run towards something real. Even if it's scary, even if we mess it up, even..." Clara kissed him. She kissed him in the middle of his half-packed living room, surrounded by boxes and fear and the wreckage of their almost love story, and it was clumsy and desperate and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara whispered, "I'm still scared." "Good," he murmured, pressing his head to hers. "Me too. Let's be scared together."
2 weeks later, Clara sat in her father's study, but this time she wasn't alone. Daniel sat beside her on the floor, his hand warm in hers, as Eduardo showed them both the album again. But now Clara saw it differently. Not as a perfect love story, but as a real one, messy and terrified and brave. "You know what your mother said to me once?" Eduardo asked, looking at them both. "About a year before she died, she said, 'Eduardo, I'm so glad you were scared, because it means you knew what you were risking, and you chose me anyway.'" He closed the album gently. That's what love is. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to love despite it. Daniel's thumb traced small circles on Clara's palm, a gesture that had become familiar in the past 2 weeks. They were taking things slowly, learning each other's fears and scars and hopes, having honest conversations that sometimes hurt, choosing to stay even when it was uncomfortable. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real. That night, after Daniel had gone home, Clara started her own album. A blank leather book, a borrowed Polaroid camera, and a promise to herself. Document the truth. The fear, the joy, the mess of loving someone while terrified. The first photo she took was simple. Daniel's coffee cup on her office desk, morning light streaming through the window. In the margin she wrote, "November 2, he showed up again today, and I let him stay. Still scared, choosing him anyway."
3 months passed. Winter settled over Portland with its endless gray rain and early darkness. Clara and Daniel navigated their relationship with the careful honesty of 2 people who knew what was at stake. There were hard moments. A fight about communication styles that left them both shaken. A night when Clara's old panic surged back and she almost fled again. But this time, she called Daniel instead of running. And he showed up. always, he showed up. And slowly, Clara learned to show up too. One evening in late January, they sat in Eduardo's living room, Clara, Daniel, and her father, drinking wine and playing cards. Eduardo studied them both with that photographer's eye of his, and Clara saw him smile. Really smile. "What?" she asked, suspicious. "Nothing," Eduardo said innocently. "Just remembering something your mother used to say." "What was it?" Daniel asked. Eduardo set down his cards and looked at his daughter with such pride, it made Clara's throat tight. She said, "The bravest thing a person can do is let themselves be loved, because it requires admitting you're worth it." Clara's eyes stung. She looked at Daniel, who was looking at her, with that same patient, steady expression he'd worn since the beginning, waiting, believing she was worth it. "I'm still working on that part," Clara admitted quietly. Daniel laced his fingers through hers. "That's okay, I'll remind you." Late that night, alone in her apartment, Clara added a new photograph to her album. It was a picture of her and Daniel from earlier that evening. Eduardo had insisted on taking it. They were laughing at something, mid-motion, imperfect and real. In the margin, she wrote, "January 28th. Still scared sometimes. Still worried I'll mess this up. But today, I realized fear doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. It means I'm doing something that matters. Dad was right. Mom was right. Love isn't about waiting until you're not afraid. It's about loving someone while you're afraid." She closed the album and placed it on her bookshelf next to her father's. 2 generations of fear and courage, bound in leather and Polaroid film. Outside, Portland's rain continued its endless song. And inside, Clara finally felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Not certainty, not the absence of fear. Just hope. And the courage to let it be enough.